Welcome to Dream Farm. Today's the 31st of May. I'm finally getting a pretty good go on my food plots here on the farm. I was coaching track down at Iowa City West, and we wrapped that up with the state meet sometime around the middle of May. And then it's been pretty rainy since then, so I haven't had a chance to get in here and get a lot of this work done, but finally I'm able to. So I want to talk about let's talk about track just real quick. I've been doing this for 11 years. I've been coaching high school track, not as a head coach, just a volunteer assistant. One of the guys that I helped coach won the Open 200 this year in Class 4A, Isaiah Lovelace, so that was really cool. And then we had a couple other state champions, individual state champions in the 800 and in the 400 hurdles. Finally, back into the field, like I said, and my first project here was to get everything ready for the corn. I'm putting in 4 to 4.5, 5 acres of corn. Finally got that done this morning. And I had limited results from corn last year, and I really do think it was because there was so many acorns on the farm that the deer just weren't, they weren't going into the corn like they normally would. I even had corn left in one of my plots this spring. In fact, I just recently disked it to clean that plot up, chop up the stalks and get it into shape for beans, and there was still some corn left. Dream Farm is brought to you by Whitetail Institute, research equals results. Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail app. Hoyt Archery. Wildlife Farming, and PH Outdoors. It was kind of questionable whether I really needed to put a bunch more corn on the farm, but I do feel like that's an important part of any food plot program. Late season is when the deer are really looking for that. During the early season, mid-season, it's not as big of a deal. I think they'd rather have beans, but you get into that cold period late, and nothing beats corn. So let's talk about the steps to plant corn in a food plot. I'll tell you what I did, and then I can give you variations of what you could do differently. The first thing I did was spread the fertilizer. And I got soil tests done. I guess that was the first step. I got the soil tests done, sent those into Whitetail Institute. And they've got this cool app, it's called Plot Perfection. And when you send the food plot sample in, the soil sample in, they just attach it to your plot on the app. So all you have to do every year is just pull up the app, open it up, and then find that plot, and it gives you a whole list, of annual soil samples that you send in, and what the analysis came back as. So that's really a cool feature. I'm not huge on buying apps, but this is definitely one that I will buy. There's a lot you can do with this. Very useful. So anyway, I found out that I needed a certain amount of potassium, a certain amount of phosphorus, and a certain amount of nitrogen. And low on, you don't need a lot of nitrogen when you're planting beans, but with corn you need a lot. So I went with 150 units per acre of nitrogen, and that was just dry urea. And I think I was 60 phosphorus and 100 potassium is kind of where I came on these different fields roughly. They were all low pH. They were all right around 6 or 5.8, 5.9. So I had them mix pelleted lime in. So my fertilizer mix that I got from the co-op in this cart, I'm going to change direction so I don't get the wind quite as bad. That had pelleted lime, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So like I said, my mix was 150, 60, 100. In most cases with dry nitrogen like that, you don't want to leave it sit on top of the ground. It's a bad idea, especially if it's going to be dry for a while, because that urea is unstable and it wants to evaporate to volatilize and go up into the atmosphere. Nitrogen by nature is a gas, so it wants to return to a gas. So if you're going to get rain, it's no big deal. You can throw it out on top. But if you're not sure, then it's usually best to either get stabilized nitrogen, which they offer at this co-op. It's called like Brazen maybe or something like that. They spray on it. And that will preserve it on top of the ground for a longer period. Or you disc it in. And I just chose to disc it in. So I've got my fertilizer in the ground, my NPK, and I've got disked up, and I came back with the corn planter, and I plant a little bit higher rate. I'm in the 25 to 28,000 kernels per acre range, and I do that for a couple reasons. Most importantly, because I'm getting free seed from like Pheasants Forever and some of the conservation groups. And the reason that the seed is free is because the seed companies can't sell it because the germination rate has dropped below, I think 90% is their minimum level that they can sell this stuff. So it's dropped below 90, so I just bump up the rate a little bit to, compensate for the fact that my germination rate may not be that, won't be full scale. The other reason too is you get a fair amount of damage, not so bad on this farm, but I've seen deer damage where they go in and they'll knock out some of the plants. So maybe going in with a little bit higher density isn't a bad idea from that standpoint too. So that's how I did it. There's a lot of other ways you can do it. I mean, I used a 6-row corn planter and ran them in there about 1.5 inches roughly deep. But you can till up the ground and you can broadcast corn and put your fertilizer down, till it up, and then broadcast, and then just drag the seed in. I know people who do that, and they grow corn that way. So you don't have to have the corn planter. Nothing fancy about mine. Mine's a beater, but it does put the right amount of seed in at the right depth, and that's the main thing. So there's a couple different ways to do it. The only thing you can't do, you can't skimp on nitrogen, or you won't get any corn. Fertilizer is the key. You've got to make sure that you've got the full rates, or you just don't get what you're hoping for. And maybe you can drop down from 150 units per acre to 120, get a little bit cheaper, but normally you get what you pay for up to a certain point when it comes to nitrogen on corn. So that's how I did the corn. I'm going to be doing beans next, so look for another episode coming up soon here on Dream Farm about how I put my beans in. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I'll see you right back here again soon for the next episode of Dream Farm. And remember to always dream big.